what was wrong with me. I was a monster. I really was in it. I was stuck in it and I didn't know what to do. I had no tools. I had no support because we don't have the village anymore the way we used to. I found myself in the fetal position one night on the bedroom floor. I was just so lost and so tired of fighting and struggling, especially with the mental battle. I said, if anything is out there, I need help because I don't know what to do anymore. I can see now this was a surrender moment. I didn't know it at the time. What came through in between the sobbing was this quiet voice inside me. And it said, you have to keep going, one foot in front of the other. Something felt different in that moment.
We are diving deep with Christina, whose journey through motherhood, rock bottom, and radical transformation perfectly illustrates what happens when the universe decides it's time for you to level up, whether you're ready or not. And we're talking about Saturn returns, soul contracts, and the kind of inner archaeology that changes everything. But don't worry, if you think astrology sounds like cosmic fortune cookies, we're going to go deep into the psychology of transformation and hopefully have enough humor to keep us sane while we explore some seriously heavy terrain. Christina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks for that. Just to piggyback on that piece, we have to laugh about it because otherwise it's just too serious sometimes. So, a little bit about me, and I'm going to share a story about what brought me to where I am now. But before I dive into that piece, the work that I do in my life fills me with so much purpose because so much of what I do with women is based off of my own journey, of my own healing, my own expansion, my own ability to tap into the hard stuff, the deep stuff, the challenging stuff that a lot of people want to look away from. That's actually my specialty, is looking at the tough stuff, not looking away. I really hope today we can explore the importance of that. And I'd love to tell you a little story on what brought me to where I am now. I went through things that were very challenging when I was younger, but then as I got older, I figured out ways to feel in control of most of it, controlling my external. I became a high school teacher. I got married. I bought a house. I did all the things you're supposed to do, right? Then I became a new mom. And that's when everything shifted. That's where I found myself in a place that I had never been before. It was, as you said, this terrain that I had never experienced. One day, my son and my daughter, both very young, I was in the thick of it. And if the house was a mess, I had a million things to do. I was trying to figure out the nap schedule. There was just so many things going on, and this invisible piece in the mind that I don't think we talk about. It was all encompassing. I was trying to clean up. I had my daughter in her high chair. My son was super dysregulated, which I can see now, and he was struggling with his own emotional stuff. And my daughter was in her high chair. He's bugging her. He's throwing things at her. She's saying, stop. He keeps doing it. I'm saying, stop. Well, I'm also trying to clean up and I'm trying to make lunches. And he continues to do it. I hit my breaking point and my son started crying. What I realized was in that moment, I had thrown the toy that I had in my hand at him. He was crying and I scooped him up. I held him. I held him for so long that day. And I tried to figure out, how did it get to this? For months after that, I went into a really dark place. I call it my dark night of the soul, rock bottom, whatever you want to label it. It was dark. And I had thoughts every day of wanting to leave, that my children would be better off without me. What was wrong with me? I was a monster. I really was in it. I was stuck in it and I didn't know what to do. I had no tools. I had no support because we don't have the village anymore the way we used to. I found myself in the fetal position one night on the bedroom floor. I was just so lost and so tired of fighting and struggling, especially with the mental battle. I said, if anything is out there, I need help because I don't know what to do anymore. I can see now this was a surrender moment. I didn't know it at the time. What came through in between the sobbing was this quiet voice inside me. And it said, you have to keep going, one foot in front of the other. Something felt different in that moment. There was a calm to it. And it was from somewhere deep within me that I hadn't felt in a very long time. So I started following that voice slowly, reading the books, trying out courses, going to practitioners, listening to podcasts. I started to search. And in the search, I began to find my way through the dark. That's what I want to talk about today. Through that search, I found some really important pieces: the Akashic Records, my spiritual connection, deeper purpose through the pain I was going through, somatic work, getting into the body, nervous system healing. These are such important pieces that completely changed my life and helped me find greater trust and a connection back to myself again.
Beautiful story. And I want to help you unpack some of these things with the astrology. I can see so many things in what you're saying. I know you have the visceral experience that breakthroughs do not rarely happen on a yoga mat under a
Mm.
perfect sunrise. More often, they arrive somewhere between a 2 a.m. cry in the bathroom and that moment you screamed into a pillow. This perfectly captures what we call the Saturn return. It's that first cosmic wake up call that hits us all between the ages of 27 to 30. And if you picture Saturn as that stern teacher who won't let you coast anymore. So every 29.5 years, Saturn returns to the exact position it was when you were born. It's like the universe saying, time's up on playing small. For you, Christina, this cosmic reckoning hit around 2015, 2016, right when you were navigating new motherhood. So Saturn sits in your house of relationships and partnerships in Sagittarius. This is the sign of truth seeking and expansion. And it's conjunct Uranus, which is the planet of sudden awakening. This
Mm.
wasn't going to be a quiet transition for you. So often, the journey towards inner awakening doesn't begin in the light, it begins in the shadow. And it
Yeah.
begins in the moments we feel most undone, unworthy, or lost. And yet, these same moments can become sacred thresholds
Mm.
and initiations into our power. I'm getting the image of someone who thought they'd signed up for Parenting 101 and found themselves in advanced quantum physics instead.
I was so over my head. And you put it perfectly because I thought I had it in the bag.
Yeah.
Anything that I had done that I had figured out how to control in some way, I was like, I got this, no
Yeah.
problem.
No gentle learning curves are allowed here. You've spoken a little bit about your journey began in motherhood. Can you take us back into some of those moments where everything felt like it was falling apart and help us understand what started to emerge from that unraveling?
Yeah, yeah. And what comes to mind just as soon as you say that is before we can actually start to find the breakthrough or see the light, I truly believe, and I found this too because I haven't just had one rock bottom. It's like these initiations that keep happening deeper into my power, my truth, my awareness. Each one is a little bit easier, I'd say, probably because I have more awareness and tools, but they continue to happen. And what I'm realizing is there is this piece of surrender you have to get to where you give up the fight, where the ego has to shed a little bit. Or what I have found in the work that I do is actually the ego integrates more, right? The human integrates a bit more into trust of what's going on here. Because prior to that, we fight. And that was my experience very much in my first one, especially, was I was fighting what was. I hadn't yet accepted that the way I thought it was going to be was not the way it was. One of the hardest parts was my son had his own challenges. And there was a part of me that for a long time tried to fix him. And then at some point I was like, oh shit, this is a me problem. I had to go within and I had to look at how my son was actually mirroring so many pieces of what was here. So I'd say that was a big piece in the unraveling, was beginning to actually go in here and look at how everything that was showing up was mirroring something back to me that I needed to see within myself.
The stern teacher of Saturn in Sagittarius suggests your growth comes through seeking truth and meaning by building inner potency and inner stability and then attaining outer equilibrium. How did that dark night of the soul force you to question beliefs about motherhood you didn't even know you held?
Yeah, I think when you experience these phases where what you've always done no longer works, you're forced to really evaluate the identity and the attachment to those pieces. My whole life was no longer working, and that was controlling so much outside of me. And I can see now that came from a place of fear, that came from a place of repressed trauma. There was so much going on in my nervous system and in my body, all of this repressed emotional pain and trauma. And the way that I was trying to deal with that worked for a certain amount of time was controlling externally. What this really forced me to do was see that I couldn't control any of that. And I thank my son because he's my greatest teacher for that. I couldn't control him, still can't, nor my daughter.
They're mirrors.
Oh man, are they mirrors in such beautiful
Mhm.
ways.
And these silent struggles in your emotional architecture, this is very clear to me in your chart where shadow meets structure, because the terrain of motherhood, I would suggest that no one really talks about the rage, the guilt, the shame, the invisible overwhelm, that motherhood is supposed to be all about cuddles and gratitude, right? And yet somehow they forgot to include the chapters on rage cleaning or spontaneous sobbing and Googling, is it normal to want to run away? And I think that this perfectly captures what's happening astrologically in your chart because you've got a cluster of planets, it's called a stellium, all packed into Capricorn. And it's in the house of hidden things and transformation. It's what Carl Jung calls the shadow. So your moon, emotions and mothering, and Neptune, dreams, illusions, and dissolution, are all buried in this house, dealing with feelings that society says mothers should not have. Now, Capricorn is the sign of structure and keeping it together. But when your emotional world and your anger are in the eighth house, you are dealing with feelings that need to be transformed rather than managed. Neptune here adds the fog of confusion, the dissolution of who you thought you were. I'm seeing you as someone who spent years being the lovely mother on the surface, while a revolutionary was building steam in the depths. That's the Venus Mars split so many women experience. We're taught to be gracious, to be the gracious giver, while our authentic power gets buried. How did you begin to honor and move through those silent emotional undercurrents in your journey?
First, I want to say I feel seen right now because this was totally my experience. I had all of this stuff coming up, and at the time, I had no awareness of what it was. I just knew that I felt so much anger, and I can attribute some of that to my trauma, yes, but also to all of the invisible weight I was carrying. And this isn't to say I did have some support in my life, but it's also this invisible weight of identity, of who we're supposed to be as mothers, how we're supposed to show up. There's this piece I've really been exploring lately of the martyrdom, of if I do enough, because I do so much, I am overwhelmed. And because I'm so overwhelmed, I feel validated in being overwhelmed. It's this sticky energy that is threaded through our collective that I think so many mothers are not even aware of. So there were all these multiple pieces that were contributing to this intense emotion that I was experiencing, and I didn't know how to channel it. It's learning how to channel it, which is what we're not taught. I think, especially as women, be quiet, you be good. Anger is definitely not an acceptable emotion to express. And the awareness of what was going on in my body and my nervous system was the gold, because it wasn't about getting rid of it. It wasn't about fighting it. No, it was actually about learning how to channel it. It was about learning how to pay attention to what I call the inner thermometer of it's getting too much. Let's create a boundary here. We got to do something for ourselves here. We got to put this away. We got to ask for help. It was learning how to work with the energy rather than attaching my worth to how angry I was getting, or attaching my identity to, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed here, I'm failing.
When did you first realize you were carrying feelings that felt too dangerous to even admit to yourself?
I would say leading up to that story that I told you about, I was starting to notice I would have to, you even mentioned it in a side piece there, I'd have to go to my room and scream into the pillow. And the hardest part about that was the shame that was attached to it. I couldn't just go and release this and find relief. I would go and release that and then feel so much shame. What's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? So many other people can do this really heavy cloak that I think made it 10 times worse.
You also mentioned that generations of women carry this invisible burden. When I look at your chart, I see you have Neptune in the eighth house, which means that you are naturally attuned to collective patterns. When did you start sensing this wasn't only your personal struggle, but maybe part of something much bigger?
Mm. You're so good with this stuff because patterns are my specialty. So that's so crazy. I can see them in very subtle ways, and also in the work that I do with clients. I can really start to pick up collective energy just based off of conversations I'm having or themes that start to show up. But I love this piece. You're actually showing me a deeper part of why this makes sense now. When I started to do the search, when I told this story and then I started to go on the search, I heard my intuition for the first time again. One of the nudges I received during that time was to start to share. And there were parts of me that were like, oh, this is sticky. I don't know if I can talk about this. But I did. And what I began to find was that as I was sharing my mental health challenges, my struggles, the struggles that my son was going through, so parenting struggles, like all of these challenges, as I started to share that, women started to reach out really organically. Hey, you shared this. It helped me feel less alone. Hey, you shared this. Now I know why that's happening. And I started to see, one, this is not just me going through, this is a collective experience from others. And two, we're not talking about it. And
Right.
that became the start of the work that I do. All of this very much slotted into place as I went along the journey, as I was listening to the nudges and doing the things I needed to do. But because I was also opening up in a vulnerable way, and women felt safe to start to come to me with these pieces.
I get a sense there's this phoenixing process of death, rebirth, and alchemical transformation. And pain becomes the sacred teacher. This ancient alchemy that lives in pain, when we lean in, not to fix it, but to feel it, we discover a kind of power we didn't know was there. There is a purpose that's hidden in the wound. And nobody puts, hey, schedule emotional breakdown in your planner. But pain always seems to show up like this uninvited house guest who insists on staying until you've had this major revelation. Now, this perfectly captures a placement in your chart. You've got this cosmic phoenix sitting in your daily life, in your health, and in service. And Pluto in Scorpio is psychological transformation at its most intense, and it's very thorough. Nothing superficial survives. So this placement means, the sixth house placement means this phoenixing process happens through the mundane realities of daily maternal life. So what looks like oh, I'm just struggling with motherhood, is actually a profound initiation into the mysteries of death and rebirth, because Pluto symbolically doesn't do surface level healing. It goes to the root of generational patterns and burns them out completely. My intuition tells me I'm getting this image of you where you've had to die to who you thought you were supposed to be as a mom. And I know you mentioned this, but it's so you could be reborn as to who you actually can become. That's Pluto's gift, because it only destroys what was never truly you to begin with. What has pain taught you about your own power?
Oh my goodness.
Does that resonate with you?
Big time. It's funny. I don't know if you know very much about Enneagrams, but I'm an Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
This is like the most intense one. And it's all inner. Not only does it resonate, it's also very validating in just sometimes I'm like, man, I'm so serious sometimes. But then this is also just me at the depth of my core.
Mm.
It's got me thinking about very much this delayering process that I feel I've continued to go through over the last 7 years. The delayering that doesn't stop, it just keeps shedding the non capital S self parts of me. I'm careful in when I say delayer because what is truly going on here as part of this process is we are souls that choose to have the human experience. And it's not about, you hear sometimes in the spiritual community, kill off the ego or the ego death. No, it's actually about integration. That's what I have found. So when I say delayering, it's actually working with the human in me to find greater integration, to find greater trust. And that's one of the most important pieces that I have found on this journey in working through my pain, in looking at my pain and getting curious with it and becoming friends with it, is this deeper trust within myself, this deeper trust of the path, of the journey. And the Akashic Records have really helped with that piece. There is this grit that it's provided me with that has really created a foundation within myself so that I know no matter what shows up, I've got this. And not just but I've also got this support from spirit and just trust in what's going on here.
When you look back, can you see what felt like complete breakdown was a deep initiation into your authentic power?
Yes.
How do you now guide others to view pain not as something broken, but as a portal into deeper self trust and embodiment?
I think for a lot of people, the idea of going into their pain feels quite scary, feels uncertain. There's going to be a lot of resistance there, recognizing that's the human in us. One of the ways that I help people feel safer to do that, I believe, is through sharing my own pain that I'm working through in real time. That's been a big part of my process. I'm continually sharing what I'm moving through, what I'm learning, what I'm experiencing. And I think that also helps not only people feel less alone, but also helps them see, oh, we can do this with the right tools and the awareness. We can move through whatever that piece is. There's something to say here too about the collective experience. This is something I say a lot is even though we are having separate human experiences and there is this thread that connects us all. You might have this very specific experience you're going through, but at the root of that, there is a shared experience and you're not alone in that.
Looking into your chart, I was looking around your communication wound. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. And I see this nervous system revolution. And they say the brain's in charge, but honestly, have you ever tried calming your body down by just thinking? Yeah, that doesn't always work. So it turns out that our nervous system isn't just along for the ride, it's the emotional GPS. And this connects beautifully to your Chiron placement. It's at 20 degrees Gemini, right on your ascendant. And Gemini rules the nervous system, communication, and the intricate network that allows information to flow throughout the body. Having this placement in your chart suggests your nervous system healing was essential to your identity development. We can talk about healing as a mental or a spiritual process, but so much of our trauma is stored in the body. The path back to ourselves begins by coming back to the body, because after all, the body's always in the present. Your mind can be in the past or in the future. I'm seeing someone whose nervous system was like a sophisticated FM radio. They had to be tuned through trauma and healing to finally pick up the frequencies of collective wisdom. And that's the gift of Chiron, the ascendant. What role does the body play in your work as a somatic soul coach? How do you help people build safety in their bodies again, especially after trauma or chronic emotional dysregulation?
I love this question. The body plays the number one role. And I have really began to view in my work and in my healing the nervous system as, in a lot of ways, the channel and direct communication between the human and the soul. Our nervous system plays such an important role in our intuitive connection, in our ability to receive from spirit and have that open, trusting communication. It also tells us a lot about what our human is experiencing in any given moment. When I began, this was a huge turning point for me on my journey. When I very coincidentally, but not, landed into doing work, somatic work within myself. I just began to explore it. I worked with a really beautiful practitioner, and she began to teach me about the nervous system. We worked together for about 3 years, doing really intense work, sessions every week. We went deep. And the awareness, one, was the most important part because it showed me. Actually, I'll tell you a story that's really cool. Before I had any idea about any of this, I went and saw a psychologist when I was in the dark, like the dark part of my journey. And we sat down and she said, okay, tell me everything that's going on. And for an hour, I unloaded everything. Then she said, okay, time's up. I'll see you in a week. I left that session feeling way worse than when I started. And I actually went into an even deeper rock bottom after that, because what that did was it actually brought so much more that I was still trying to repress to the surface, and my nervous system just imploded. I didn't have the awareness to know what was going on. I didn't have the awareness to know how much repressed energy was being held in here and how much I was trying to protect myself from feeling that. And I've also done a lot of work around getting to know the Kundalini process, the awakening process. The nervous system plays such an important role with this because it's all energy. And those are our main energy centers. When we work with the energy, whether you want to call it Kundalini or in your nervous system, right? Whatever you want to label it, when we begin to work with the energy that's showing up in our bodies, we create space to hold it, to feel it, to process it, to shift it and release it out through. We clear the channel. And when we clear the channel, that's when our intuitive connection really comes online. And so the body and the nervous system is, in my opinion, the most important part of this.
With this understanding of nervous system regulation, has that changed the way you approach healing, both for yourself and the women you work with?
Before I started the somatic work, a lot of the work that I did with women, there was the spiritual component, but a lot of it was more talk and helping them build awareness of their patterns, which is the most important part. We have to have the awareness. But what I have learned is we have to be able to drop into the body, because our body is the vessel that holds all of it, is where we feel. We don't think our intuition, we feel it. That's where we tap into such deeper levels of trust That's where we can discern what is right or wrong for us. That's where we can tap more deeply into our gifts, is in the body. So it's completely changed the work that I do. It's taken it so much deeper. And something you and I have chatted about a little bit is this piece. There's this idea that I want to ascend. I want to go to this place, which I believe is a bit bypassy, which I get it. It's the human in us that just doesn't want to do this sometimes. But what I have learned is that in order to ascend to these higher energetic frequencies, we have to be able to descend into the body first to clear the dense energy that is still holding us in the 3D. We do that in the body, in our energy.
I see that central to spiritual and emotional healing. How do you blend this understanding with your intuitive work?
I have a lot of women that come to me that want to learn how to connect with their intuition, that want to be able to hear themselves clearer, that want to be able to strengthen their spiritual connection. There's this important piece that I teach them in the beginning, which is how to discern between the ego and your intuition, which is, in my opinion, your channel to the soul. How do you discern? A lot of the time, what we don't realize we're doing is thinking our intuition shows up in a certain way. So, what I start to do is help you discern the energy of it, right? The ego, and maybe this can help some of your listeners. If you're trying to strengthen this connection, just start to pay attention to the energy of it. The ego will often, I'm not going to say it does because it's different for each person, but often what I notice in the work is the ego will show up in more frantic ways, quick energy, fast. There's a time constraint, often more heady, or it's externally focused, feels more disconnected, anxious, fear based. Your intuition often is felt. There's a deeper, more grounded, rooted energy to it. Slower, sometimes quieter, like a whisper, a gentle nudge, and there's no time constraint. The intuition will be like, come back to me when you're ready, I'll be here. The ego's, no, we got to do this now. That can be a really helpful piece, is just practicing discerning how it's showing up, how it feels.
Many people are caught in a machinery of distraction with their foot on the gas, and they got to slow down and put their foot on the brake. When you're slow, it's much easier to speed up. When you're fast, it's much harder to slow down.
Yes.
I want to introduce the Akashic Records connection. In my mind, I'm imagining opening a file on my soul's desktop, and I'm seeing everything: past lives, karmic patterns, that questionable X you knew was a lesson, core parts, divine library, and cosmic reality check. Now, this connects directly to your eighth house, Neptune. Neptune is like a mystical portal. It's a planet that symbolizes dreams, illusions, but it also can point towards divine downloads for collective healing. At 3 degrees Capricorn in the eighth house, we're back to the eighth house again, the house of rebirth, death, and transformation. And it is closely conjunct with your moon and Mars. So Neptune is that planet of divine connection and access to the collective consciousness. With its position in this house, in your chart, it creates a natural ability to access hidden mystical information, especially around psychological and emotional healing. Now, Neptune in Capricorn is about bringing spiritual wisdom into practical, structured form. This isn't floating in the clouds. This is building bridges between the mystical and the material. The conjunction with Moon and Mars suggests that your emotional nature and warrior energy are both conduits for collective wisdom. I'm getting the sense that your ability to access the Akashic Records isn't a skill you've learned. I sense it's written into your cosmic DNA, because this conjunction I'm seeing creates a natural portal between emotional experience and collective spiritual wisdom. How did the Akashic Records come into your life, And what continues to surprise or move you the most when accessing this dimension on behalf of your clients?
I continue to love how all of this lines up. And this is what I love so much about astrology is that it's similar in some ways to how I view the Akashic Records is it validates the pieces of what you go through and what you move through and it helps make sense and create clarity around it. The records came into my life after that dark night when I was on my search, when I was strengthening my spiritual connection. A key piece that should be noted first was around that time, my grandfather passed away, and he started to visit me in my dreams. And he was also visiting me in my meditations. I always like to say as well, like growing up, I did not have a spiritual connection. I was not brought up in religion. There was nothing. And actually, my dad would say to me, it's up to you to go search that out. And I'd be like, just give me an answer. And he'd be like, no, and then my grandfather passed away, and I started to receive these things that I couldn't quite explain. He was telling me in my dreams and my meditations, and that really opened the doorway into there's something more going on here. Then the Akashic records started to come through. And I always say the records start to call you. You'll start to notice. You might hear someone talk about them, or you might come across a profile, or you might listen to this podcast. Oh, what are the Akashic records? You'll start to hear them calling you. I started to hear them. And I began to read different books about them and learn different ways that you can access them. When I started to feel confident in this connection, I went into my records every night for months. And what I received was deeper clarity around all the things I had been through and why my soul chose them. That's an important piece. This is a really important part that I teach about and that I embody is this purpose that our souls actually choose every single thing we go through in this lifetime and all lifetimes, all soul experiences, with one intention for expansion, energetic expansion. And in order for that expansion to occur, we have to experience the contrast because it is the contrast that we heal through, we grow through, we expand through that allows us to expand into that higher frequency. We have to have the contrast. What I began to realize was all these contrasting experiences I had in this life actually made so much sense and also helped me start to release this victim piece of it's happening to me and shifting it to no, it actually happened for me and I chose it. I also like to say, because sometimes when people get to know the Akashic Records, there's this piece of, ooh, all these past lives. And there can be a temptation to get stuck in that. Oh, this happened to me and that's my identity. But what I say is one of the most important things with the records is that anything that you receive in your records is to be brought back to the now to help you understand the pattern or the cycle you are experiencing that you're supposed to be expanding through or that you have the opportunity to expand through. So what you're shown is information to help you cycle through that energy because this is not the first time you've experienced that cyclical energy. It will have shown up in other soul experiences also.
And what may be termed as the ethereal, this is Neptune in your chart, and the material, which is Capricorn, that it wants to bring spiritual wisdom and humanize it into practical application. How do you balance the mystical or the ethereal aspects of your work with the very grounded practical healing that mothers need?
I think that you can't have one without the other. And again, it goes back to this piece of we are souls that choose to have this human experience. I believe the goal here is learning how to bring the two together. It's interesting because what I find with my children is that there's always going to be a polarity. And we're going to have really human days where it's like we're playing baseball and I'm a coach and like I coach my daughter's softball team and I'm the hustle in the morning, getting them to school, making the lunches, doing that stuff. But then my daughter's really into some of the things that I do and she'll want to sit and pull cards with me or talk about crystals or I'll connect in the records and find out more about our contracts together. But that it's not one or the other. It's learning how to I'm not a huge fan of the word balance. I don't think it's possible. I think we're always in this continual ebb and flow between different experiences, but it's about finding some middle ground. You're going to have days where it feels so good, like you're doing it and you got it. And maybe you're having really mystical experiences that day and you're feeling the synchronicities and you're connected to spirit and the kids are in a great mood and it's in flow. And then you're also going to have days where it's shit. And you're in it and it's messy and maybe you're really dysregulated. And so, how do we help you find more neutrality around that experience,
Mm.
more acceptance that it's a continual ebb and flow?
It certainly is a moving diagram. With this powerful eighth house Neptune connection that you have in your chart, you're accessing not just personal healing information. This is the sense I'm getting, is that you're getting in also collective patterns. I want to ask you this question. Let me know if this is appropriate for now. If it's not, we can edit it out. But what's coming to my mind is, what are you seeing in the records about this particular time in history, especially for mothers and feminine healing?
Something that I'm shown a lot is this really interesting energetic visual they'll give of the generation prior, this generation of parenting, and the next. What I'm shown is the past generation, so maybe people in their like 65 and up, there is this contract that a lot of those parents signed up for, their souls, of having to hold the most that can be held without being able to transmute it or change it or heal it. This is where we have parenting around more discipline, sometimes physical discipline, harder parenting. Then we have this generation of parents that are coming through or that are here now between the ages of maybe 30 to 60, 65, who had to go through significant trauma, but also are invited to shift and heal it through the level of awareness that we're shifting into as a collective. So there's that group. And then there's the next one, 30 and down, who have this really high level of awareness, who actually have the least amount of trauma within them, any other generation prior. What I'm seeing is for this generation of parents and mothers, especially, there is not even an invitation because I believe our souls have very much chosen the path we're on. There is a initiation so many of the mothers are experiencing or will experience. That is beginning to really sift and shift through the collective trauma that's been stored and held to a certain point where now we're moving in a new direction energetically. It's a slow move, but more and more mothers are waking up. And what I'm also shown is that the mothers are at the forefront of this. One, because the feminine is the oracle. We often can see before things actually are here. We can pick up on the subtleties. We can see or feel into what's in the field before it's here. Two, because mothers play such an important role in the healing of generations moving forward. Because what mothers are doing now not only shifts what their children are experiencing and then what those children choose to do if they have children moving forward, but also what mothers pre-motherhood are doing. Because I work with a lot of women before they become mothers. And so they're shifting their energy before they even are having children. There is a lot of work that's going on right now that's really the energy, and it's playing a big part in what we're going to be doing moving forward here.
I love your approach. You have storytelling medicine. You're a natural teacher, and your approach to intuition is refreshingly grounded. Intuition sometimes gets branded as this magical, elusive gift, like something only people who own 27 crystals can access. But really, I see it's built in tech. It just needs to be turned back on. Your intuition perfectly reflects your Mercury at 5 degrees Leo in the third house, conjunct your sun. I know it sounds like astro speak, but it's called a cazimi. That's when Mercury is so close to the sun, it becomes like a precious jewel held up to the light. So your thoughts and identity are fused, which means when you speak your truth, you're literally speaking your soul. This is the mind that learns through storytelling, processes experiences by turning it into a narrative, and heals by making the personal universal through creative expression. And it's in its natural home. So this suggests to me it creates a natural born teacher who learns by doing and teaches by inspiring. I'm getting the sense that your mind works like a master storyteller who realizes that every personal story is actually a universal myth waiting to be told. This is the gift of your Leo Mercury of turning pain into purpose through the power of narrative. What do you say to the woman who feels disconnected from her intuition, who wants to trust herself, but doesn't know how? Where can she begin?
First, I want to say thank you because sometimes I have to tell myself, okay, don't share that. It's like the faucet doesn't turn off sometimes. And so this actually makes a lot of sense because I am always picking up things in the collective or what I'm going through. And I'm like, oh, I should talk about that. And not from a place of like for no reason. It's because it just pours out of me.
Yeah.
And often I don't know what to do with it all. But for the woman who is struggling to feel that, to trust that, to connect to that, I would say start to slow down, start to create pockets of connection within self, start to listen and get curious with what shows up. And that could look like resistance to start. That could look like, I don't need to connect. I don't have time to connect. I'm too busy. There's too much going on. What's the point of this? That in itself is something to listen to. Start to get curious with the parts that show up, that tell you why you can't, why you shouldn't, why there's no time. Because the truth is that all of it is here. What I've really found on my journey is we come into this world as these pure lights. And I see this with my kids. We come into this world as these pure lights and we go through these experiences that layer on top of that we create identities with, that shut us off from our power. It cloaks us. And so returning back to this place, trusting this again, being able to hear it and listen to it is about slowly letting yourself layer those pieces. We do that by getting curious with what the layers are. We do that by getting curious with what the resistance is. We do that by getting curious with our triggers, getting curious with who we are and our experience. I promise you, the more that you listen, the more that you let yourself feel, the more you validate yourself, the easier it becomes to hear your truth.
You are the agency of amplification for the embodied healing revolution. You can meditate, you can journal, you can chant, you can sage your house. But if your body is still clenched like a tax deadline is coming, something is really off. And embodiment isn't a buzzword, it's the homecoming. I see this connects to a crucial dynamic in your chart in the Venus Mars relationship in the fifth house. It wants to create harmony and beautiful experiences for your children. But Mars at 11 degrees and Capricorn in the eighth house carries a structured, transformative, I'll say, anger about systemic injustices between being the perfect mother and honoring authentic power. Like you rightly said, when the nervous system is in survival mode, even love can feel unsafe. So healing isn't only about insight, it's about regulation. It's about teaching the body that peace is possible I always say that when you have peaceful chemistry, you have peace of mind.
Yes.
So teaching the body that peace is possible shows how you've integrated these opposing energies into wisdom about sustainable transformation. So my sense tells me that you are someone who had to learn that your too much
Mm.
was actually everybody else's not enough. That the intensity you were taught to possibly hide was exactly what the world needs to feel and heal.
Yes.
Does that
Yeah,
resonate with you at all?
it does. And it takes me back to what I've learned a lot about my trauma and how I responded to that, the protective mechanisms I formed in responding to that trauma. And what I found when I reflected back, and I've done a lot of work with this, one of my big protectors is it's very easy for me to put in a boundary. And where I carried a lot of shame for this for many years, what I realize is that's actually what a lot of women need to learn how to do. It's become a beautiful gift in a way, a skill that once I was able to alchemize the shame of no, this was actually me protecting myself when I didn't feel safe, and that these boundaries are necessary in some ways. Once I was able to alchemize that, then I was able to use that as a skill to teach women who actually can't do that at all. And there's this piece, especially when it comes to the motherhood piece, a lot of women don't know how to take time for themselves. They don't know how to voice their needs. They don't know how to say when it's too much. They don't know how to receive or accept help. And that's been a big piece is that which I used to be shameful for actually has become a beautiful teaching point on helping women be able to reclaim their power and meet their needs.
How do you teach other women to honor their nurturing nature and their warrior energy without feeling like they're betraying one or the other?
Off the top of my head, this is where parts work comes in really helpful. So I do a lot of parts work from the internal family systems, Richard Schwartz. It's beautiful work and it really connects to the somatic work. So what I'll do is I'll have the client go into their body, see what's showing up somatically, the energy that's showing up, what wants to be felt, what needs to be seen, witnessed, experienced. But then we'll work with the parts that show up. And these parts, I like to say, think of yourself at a table and your deeper self, your soul, your intuition, think of that capital S as the head of the table. But then you have all these other parts sitting at the table that also all want to have a voice. They all want to be heard. These are our protective mechanisms. Until that deeper self comes online, all those other parts control the table. And that's often why we find ourselves in these places of people pleasing, or in some cases, addiction, like all of these things that are shadow expressions of actually something we need. Learning how to work with these parts, not pushing them away, not resisting them, integrating them allows us to find more of meeting our needs while also balancing other pieces in our
Mm.
lives and finding more coherence.
Yeah, loving deeply while honoring the fierce energy that demands systemic change. There's a lot more I want to talk to you about. Do you want to do a part two?
I'd love to.
Because I want to talk to you about pioneering collective healing. I want to talk about roots of love because that carries profound meaning to your soul's evolutionary purpose. You don't name something like that unless you're ready to go deep, like root canal meets rebirth deep. Because it's not just about light, it's about loving the parts that we've buried.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk to you more about that. If you're okay to have a pause continuance and I can park this podcast or I can release the podcast and then do a part two.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it'd be fun to we could always release it and say, and we've got part two coming, then record that. I would love that.
I also want to thank you very much. When I step back and look at your entire chart, I see it as your soul sacred contract. Your soul signed up for one of the most challenging but essential missions possible
Mm.
to bridge ancient wisdom with modern healing to transform your own wounds into healing gifts for others, and to pioneer new approaches to spiritual service that empower rather than create dependence. You didn't choose an easy incarnation.
You're validating the pain because sometimes I have said to myself, what the hell did we choose on this journey? Because what I find is it doesn't stop. Like, just when I'm like, okay, yeah, that was the big one that I needed to move through there. Nope, another one shows up. And it's this continual deepening, which is such a beautiful process. But then sometimes I'm just like, whew, this is a lot for my human.
I would imagine your soul looked at the state of healing and spirituality, and I would imagine it said, I'll take on that challenging emotional curriculum. I'll take on the relationship mastery lessons. I'll take on the communication responsibilities and the service transformation work because I know what will be needed to help others heal and awaken. This is why your struggles have been so specific and why your gifts are so precisely aligned with what people need now. So my sense is your soul didn't randomly receive these challenges. It specifically chose them as the training ground, as the boot camp, if you will, for developing the exact healing capacities that is meant for human evolution. This is what is required in the Aquarian age.
Yes. And I will say too, it's impossible for me to ignore when something is not in alignment. Sometimes I'll look at people and I'll be like, man, wouldn't it be nice to just like truck along? It's
Yeah.
impossible. And if something is not in alignment for me or not fully authentic, it will eat away at me. I cannot leave a stone, what's the saying, unturned or
Yeah.
whatever that is. So I really want to say thank you because you're so skilled at what you're able to do with these charts, like really being able to pull out these really important pieces that, especially if I wasn't where I was at on my journey, I'd be like, oh my God, thank God I feel seen right now. Because really, you're pointing to such key pieces of what I've experienced and the questions I've had and the doubts I've had sometimes on the journey, but it all serves such a greater purpose.
Where can people find you?
Mm.
And do you have any parting words?
So you can find me on all of my socials at christina.soulempowered. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I do YouTube, and connect, message me, say hello, come join my community. I have lots of different ways that I work with clients. I offer readings in the Akashic Records, intuitive guidance sessions with spirit. I do one-to-one soul coaching containers, and I have a soul empowered community for women. So, yeah, I would love to
Beautiful.
connect.
In part two, we'll cover your North Node. We'll cover
Yes.
the evolutionary pressure cooker that I'm seeing. We'll also look at your future trajectory because I see there's an expansive vision for the work that you're doing. And also how outer planets are, what the generational mission is. There's
Mm.
something very profound about what you're doing that I'm seeing. And we'll go into more of that as well. So
Great.
that'll be part two. It's probably going to have to be when I get back from Greece because I'm
Yes.
going to Delphi, Temple of Delphi, where the divine
Oh,
feminine was in the oracle.
yeah. It
Um,
holds such powerful, potent energy.
oh, yeah.
So that will be so exciting.
Have you
Yeah.
experienced the conversation today?
It was beautiful. Like, honestly, I didn't have expectations, but even when we did our intro call, I was like, man, that was an awesome intro call. Just so rich. I love these conversations, and you don't get to have them as much as you'd like, I find. You probably do because you have your podcast, but I have really enjoyed just the richness of this conversation. I feel like we could have just talked for a really long time. Have such a good trip.
Thank you so
And
much. And thank you for allowing me to look into your chart. It's a real
yes.
honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter.
Bye.
Bye.